Hello everyone and welcome to a really exciting dev vlog, as Yudin is telling us why Odino takes so long, and it's not because they're lazy, but rather because they're doing some pretty big reworks, which is nice to see. Quite a lot of familiar systems maybe from previous Yudin titles, but also some uh, interesting new mechanics up to come, and yeah, let's go over them bit by bit. They start up here with saying that Odino still is at work, so the new divisions, amphibious, FOB, and so on, all still to come, all coming up on their end. And then they explain why Odino takes longer than maybe previous ones do, because they are most likely doing the biggest rework they have done since launch to the game here with this upcoming patch, as their goal is to create a more realistic combat system. And yep, the more realistic combat system is a major overhaul, as it affects not only the current state of the game, but also the upcoming Odino milestone. We need to ensure everything is aligned, tested, bug fixed, and working properly. This is one reason Odino is taking longer, as we want to make sure it meshes well with the new system. So yeah, what can we expect? Looking at combat in WARNO in its current form, we weren't satisfied with the binary aspect of what happens when two units engage each other. The outcome is always the same. Either one or the other gets destroyed, suppression resistance to it, and the management of unit in combat feel too trivial and fleeting. And yeah, that's a major criticism also of mine and a lot of other players. Like the biggest part of this is airplay, with airplanes either killing this target and getting out, or you can kill them beforehand, and they don't kill a target. Sometimes they still kill their target and then get killed afterwards, but it's like there's no way of getting an airplane off its target other than killing it. And it's also similar when tanks meet and so on. Like, engagement is always ending with someone dying, but especially in the air department, it's really, really binary, as they explain here, and that for sure needs changing. Like, there should be a way of airplanes being pushed back and aborting mission without them being outright murdered by the AA. And that is currently not in the game. Like, suicide planes are a big thing, because they still drop their bomb loads no matter how many missiles fly their way. And if the missiles don't hit their target, they don't do anything. And that is highly frustrating. Like, if you have bad RNG, you get punished really, really hard for. And the suppression system, which I guess will be somewhat similar to Steel Division in that regard, or maybe regiments, where, like, if a plane has too much AA opposition or realizes there's too much AA, they just go back to base. And in Steel Division, when too much flak is flying around them, they go back to base. And a similar thing here would be nice, that if there's enough missiles, even if they don't hit, they stress the plane out, plane goes back to base, doesn't die, you can use it again afterwards, but it doesn't get to its target either. Like, a system like that would be pretty good. And for infantry combat, I guess there's also something like that. Like they explained further here, a fresh approach, a more realistic combat system would offer several benefits over the old format. If it would make combat more realistic and WARNO as a whole more authentic, gives the player a larger margin of error during combat. This allows them to recover units, not simply lose them, and increase the unit's time to kill ratio, thus lowering micromanagement and the game's overall pace. So yeah, they want to anchor it more around suppression. Combat should also offer the opportunity to break a unit's morale instead of just beating the units to death, rinse and repeat. Like, rooting a unit should be as much a valid outcome as a complete destruction. So I guess this is somewhat close to Steel Division. Like, they need a fallback mechanic. I, for once, wouldn't like to see the direct, like, AI fallback that we have in Steel Division. That works pretty well in Steel Division. Like, their modifiers there are a bit too bad, and like the fallback modifier is a bit too strong, maybe. But in general, the mechanic is great for Steel Division. Though we have to remember, Steel Division has a frontline and like two parts of the map that really are in the hands of one side or another, like, to a pretty big degree. Like, there's few behind the line action. Whilst in WARNO, the battlefield is more open, and like, there's no half of the map that is yours and half map and that is in the hands of the other side. So fallback AI could be pretty annoying if you leave it in the hands of the AI, and like if it's not really well programmed, then you have a lot of scenarios where AI falls back into enemy positions or stuff like that. So those are reasons why I wouldn't like the same system as in Steel Division. I would rather like to see it like in that you press a button and your pinned down units, I guess pinned down will come back with this, lose their ability to shoot, but you gain mobility back and you can micro then where you fall them back to, so that you can decide where to go with them. At the moment, the cohesion system in WARNO is a bit annoying, and like if a unit gets too low cohesion, it also gets slowed down so heavily that it is often not even worth trying to micro, because you won't get it out of the combat it is in anyways. So it's better to just focus on another unit and accept that the unit is dead. And that's exactly the system that they don't want, like units dying once they hit combat if the other side is just stronger. With tanks it's a bit better thanks to tank smoke and their overall mobility just being higher than infantry, but with infantry especially, like once they hit low cohesion, it's game over anyways in 90% of the cases, because you just can't micro them out of there, and like getting back off that would be good, I guess. And then with the TTK, it seems like they will reduce damage across the board, and maybe increase stun damage instead as they go on over here, like updating suppression and its effects. So this also is somewhat similar to what we have, like what I explained earlier and what we have in Steel Division. In the current old format, suppression occurs with hits and near misses, but only with HE weapons and ammunitions, and at a minimum level with AP and heat ammunition. We decided to add more heft to the suppression mechanic across the board, especially ladder types of weapons. So AP shell landing, and they explain further here, that means that after the overhaul, each weapon in the game will still deal suppression, even if its shot is a hit or miss. Like, even if it misses, it still does suppression. The level of suppression depends on the munitions type and caliber, but will be more than in the original form. For instance, one consequence will be that near misses of AP ammunition will directly affect tightly grouped tanks, suppressing several of them if they are packed too close. Better not rely too much on those armored plops commander. So I like that. It's a way of, like, at the moment, cheap plops are really, really efficient because you attack only one target at a time when you attack a plop, outside of maybe an artillery landing. Like, artillery is the only thing that does good suppression in AoE at the moment, and maybe bombs, though even those to a lower degree than in previous Eugen games. And like, if you shoot a tank with an AP shell, it only affects that one single tank. So if you have 6 tanks running into the enemy, the other 5s are still all fine. And with this, I guess it will be somewhat closer to Steel Division, where we also have bigger AoE effects of hits, and this way a single Leopard, if it blows up a tight formation of like one tank in a tight formation of 6 T-55s or so, the other T-55s will automatically go low onto a lower cohesion stance as well. So those cheap unit plops won't be as great anymore, and that's a good thing. Like, they are a bit too strong at the moment, and it's a good play against just blobbing. And with the lower TTK, it's also a bit needed. Like, if the higher level tanks maybe need one more shot for some lower level vehicles, then the cohesion thing is the way to counter that, because they still will stop the rest of the formation as well, even if they don't kill them outright. Really, really tough thing to get right, though. Like, time to kill. You don't want to have a chewing gum effect. You don't want to have a system like in Company of Heroes in this game, for example. Like, in Company of Heroes, the Company of Heroes system is fine, but like that chewing gum effect where like units get super big bony when they retreat, and it's more about slowly grinding the enemy down and getting a slight advantage every time. Like, I don't think that would fit WARNO. And you can't have the same retreat strength as, and like the same power of retreat as you have in Steel Division, because in Steel Division you can't repair tanks, you can't repair squads. In WARNO you can. So retreats here have to be done differently, and have to be done more carefully, because if you do make them too strong, it's just gonna be a slow grind, and whoever runs out of supplies loses first, with FOBs that might not even have them on either side and so on like that. So you have to be really careful in how to implement it. But in general, I like the idea. Like, WARNO is a bit too fast for the casual audience. On the top level, people like Karma and so on can manage, but all of my casual friends and a lot of casual players I meet on the ladder, like, it's too fast. And so having better time to react to situations popping up on your screen, I think, is a great idea. You just have to make it so that it is not feeling completely unrealistic and is getting out of hand in its like sluggishness, and it doesn't become too much of a slow grind. Like, a strong flank and so on still should have good impact when it comes up. And a good ambush still should be able to destroy the enemy, but a bit slower TTK than we have at the moment, especially in armored engagements and so on, could be quite nice. And especially in the air department. So yeah, combat experience. Unit ability to endure is also changed. Resistance to suppression will be one pillar of a unit experience level. The new system will increase this importance. Veterancy level will influence a unit's resilience to suppression in various ways. Better resistance to suppression received. So I think of this as the shield variable. So I guess this means that you start with a higher level of cohesion than a normal unit without veterancy. Like, your max, when a normal unit has like 100 max cohesion, you start with 120, and you have to be lower to 80, just like another unit, to start feeling effects. So you have extra 20 resilience that the enemy has to chew through with dealing stress damage before you get affected. Faster regeneration to a normal state of suppression received, after suppression received, so you start to regenerate faster. Good. And better resilience to casualties. So in general, you just are buffed on every level against suppression with combat experience or with like veterancy. And I think that's a good idea as well. I'm not sure if this is called combat experience in-game. Yeah, Eugen, that's always a bit of an issue for Eugen. They are a bit yeah, they lack a bit of consistency when naming things in their dev diaries. But yeah, the more experienced the unit is, the slower it will suffer from suppression, and that's good. At the moment, doesn't feel that way too much yet. There is a modifier on it already, but I feel like this is one of the main modifiers that there should be. Maybe even would allow to reduce the other modifiers of veterancy a bit. I still would argue for a 4th veterancy level, by the way, or like a 5th, like -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. At the moment, in my scale, we have -1, 0, 1, and 2. I feel like a 3rd level above that you can only reach maybe by upvetting via commanders or combat damage done to the enemy. I feel like would be great, and I think with these modifiers and with less of the accuracy and rate of fire modifiers, that could be quite nice. But that's just me there. But yeah, the less affected you will be by the receiving damage. So in general, more gameplay around cohesion, less deadliness, more time to react. In general, really good changes in my eyes. Yeah, the game's casualty rates, if you compare them to real life, are really, really high. Obviously, it's a video game, so it will always be higher, but it's just a bit too much at the moment. The speed in which you have to react also is just too much for the casual audience, so I feel like trying to target the casual audience, especially in a game that is targeting a bit of an older population maybe as well, is quite good. Not making it an APM spam fest. You still can put down your APMs though. Like, people are worried that this will reduce micro to a level where you can't micro anymore. That's just, in my eyes, always a misconception about micro in video games, and especially in RTS. Like, as long as you play an RTS, there will always be something to improve. Like, APM will always give you a slight advantage, no matter how slow the game is. There will always be something else to micro to just get perfectly right into the right spot. And micro still will absolutely matter here. It just means that the other side maybe has a slight bit more time to react to things popping up, and if so, maybe even micro will be more important because more people can do micro than before. And the enemy side can react with their own micro to your micro, which is always good. Player interaction is what should be pushed in the RTS and not each side doing their own thing and the other side just getting punished if they don't see their and watch the one spot for a second. Yeah, new unit rates. That's another big thing. They say it's like Steel Division fans. No, like they kind of hint that it's like Steel Division. I would say it's a good mix of Wargame, Steel Division, and new things. Like, for example, the Special Force modifier. New units get unit traits. You can't see them here. For example, the Green Berets will have the Special Force and the Shock. I guess this is trying to symbolize the two swords. I kind of hope these are still placeholders. They don't look amazing. I feel like the Special Force one is fine. The Shock one maybe could get a bit better than these two swords. But yeah, we have new modifiers. They already explained 3 of them. They say more will come, like leaders, military police, GSR, and indoctrinated, and more. GSR could be ground search radar. That's what the Discord tried to is coming up with for now as the most reasonable idea, which would be pretty cool. If I don't know how many of you played StarCraft, but ground search radar with like having the effects of like a sensor tower in StarCraft 2, Terran sensor tower, in that case that you see stuff in the shadows, like in the Fog of War, indirectly, like you see where units move. I guess with ground search radar would make most sense for like vehicles, like you see where enemy is moving vehicles, but you don't exactly see what vehicle it is, and maybe not even quite how many it is, just that there's like activity over there and over there, so that you have a bit more reconnaissance on different levels than you have at the moment, where it's just like either you see the enemy or you don't see the enemy. Could be pretty cool. Would absolutely love a system like that. And then, yeah, the 3 they explain are special forces, which are pretty similar to what they were in Wargame Red Dragon. As special force elite units are going even above elite veterancy, and that means infantry units with this trait will enjoy even more resilience to suppression, increased movement, and faster rate of fire. Especially the movement speed one is interesting. It's something that the current veterancy system doesn't give. It's something that veterancy in Steel Division and training levels in Wargame Red Dragon already gave your units. And yeah, it will be something that makes special force units pretty strong, for sure, and a bit more unique. And that's the goal, I guess, with all these, to have a lot more uniqueness in the individual units out, and that being less based on veterancy. Like, KDA shouldn't feel the same as a Green Beret, even if they somehow get up to max veterancy. There should still be some separation there, and this is what allows for that. Shock. These troops will have the ability to inflict additional suppression on their targets in close quarter combats, such as urban terrain and woods. This represents the greater emphasis on close combat, including hand-to-hand fighting. Paratroopers and assault engineers will be the priority candidates for features to feature such a trait. So yeah, your paratroopers will be better for urban combat. I guess urban combat with the new urban maps will be more prevalent in WARNO in general, and giving some extra units some extra strength in that is pretty nice as well. Suppression also featuring here, so yeah, extra feature focus on suppression even in these traits here. As IFV infantry is another one. So just riding into battle with infantry fighting vehicles will also get an extra suppression resilience bonus, but only as long as they are fighting next to an IFV. Will be interesting. Will be a bit tough to will be interesting to how they balance this, like how big the radius will be, how close they're gonna be. These half squads are pretty small, i.e. the American Bradley fire teams, and doctrine dictates they fight dismounted and in close coordination with the vehicle that brought them to the battlefield. They receive the bonus if they stick close to an IFV. It doesn't have to be their own one, otherwise that would be pretty annoying and micro-intensive, and that's what they want to reduce a bit, the micro-intensity, but you can like have a group of IFVs and infantries next to it, fire teams next to it. And yeah, that's another cool trait. Like, that's a unique one, for example. Like, the shock one, we also don't quite have in that way in any of the previous games. Special forces, as I said, pretty close to what we have in Wargame. But the IFV one especially is a one that we don't have in any Eugen game like that. Like, those AoE effects should be pretty cool. I hope they find a good way to indicate all of this. But in general, really, really cool. And as I said, like, more coming, especially the GSR one. I would be really hyped if it would be what I explained earlier with the ground surge radar and giving us a bit of different ways of radar, but nothing here about it or on any of the discords. No public official talk about this by Eugen, sadly. But yeah, more to come as well. And this is a really good way of making things unique, so I'm happy with that. And then the list continues. We are not done yet. You can expect a couple of more changes. We are adding a hit point gouge on the unit label to better display the difference between suppression and physical damage. This is absolutely important. This will help players see the stats of their units at a glance without opening up the unit's information panel. The suppression gouge will come with a coloring system, letting you know when the time has come to really move your unit out of harm's way. Hit point system, like hit points being represented, really important. Suppression system represented in color. Not sure what that exactly means. Could be like in Broken Arrow. Like in Broken Arrow, you have the hit point bar, and then you have a color code on your unit icon that represents which level of suppression they are under, with like yellow and red. Or it could be 2 bars, or like one number indicator, one in bar. Like the suppression still with a bar. We'll see how this goes, but like both things are great. Having a hit point indicator, not having to click on a unit to see how many hit points it has left, great. And having a color coding system for really realizing on which level of cohesion your unit is, also great. Because at the moment, you still sometimes have to double check if this is now really normal or already low cohesion by just clicking on it and checking the cohesion thing down below. Having that color coded makes it easier. If they implement that nicely in the UI, this would be a big improvement as well. And then commander unit change. We will introduce a major change to how command units work. After the patch, command units don't have to remain in a capture zone once they have captured it. Big. This change stemmed from our feeling that the old Wargame Red Dragon mechanic led to too easy cheese tactics, including the infamous CV sniping. In our experience, this is detrimental to the game. By not having a command unit remain in the command zone, we aim to improve the game by simplifying the in-game rules, removing all micromanagement related to watching over or moving units from command zones far behind the front line, allow more aggressive plays with command units, with players using them as true leader units, boosting the experience level of friendly units in battle, giving command helicopters, those often overlooked units, a second life. They can be used to quickly capture a zone and move away again. So this is big. So what this most likely means is that you won't have to have any more CVs in your backline. You just buy one CV at the beginning of the game. Like, you still can buy multiple to do it faster, but like if you want to do it the way, you can just buy one CV and go from zone to zone and capture all zones on your half, and then move on into the contested zone in the middle, or the contested zones in the middle with CVs there, where you still will need them most likely, because yes, you don't need to keep them in if they are captured by you already, but obviously if the enemy moves them in to contest it, you most likely will have to have another CV of your side in there as well, otherwise the enemy will just recapture it. So it doesn't mean that you won't have CVs at important spots, and that killing off CVs is unimportant, because it still allows people to kill contested zone. It will mean, though, that a single recon unit sliding through the lines and going onto a CV killing spree in the early to mid game won't happen anymore. Like, if the enemy wants to capture your real zone, way number one is pushing in there and actually getting there with their own forces and getting a CV in that way and then taking it over. And way number two is they could theoretically slide a CV through your lines and capture them that way. But first of all, that is more expensive than a CV unit, a recon unit doing it. It's also less hidden because CV units have worse stealth than recon units, and it's less expensive for you if the enemy does it to you because you don't lose the CVs, you just have to find the enemy CV. So it's a lot weaker than the CV sniping at the moment is, and that is a good thing. Like this behind the line CV sniping, especially with units like the SPG-9 or the Foxes of the British, was on quite a couple of maps just too strong and too annoying and really taking away from the awesome battles that were going on in the middle of the map. And this by no means means that behind the line action won't be strong. It just means it will be less centered about CVs and more open to everything. Like, it's not so focused about, oh yeah, I now slip my Fox in and I run the CV down, the CV is super expensive, I kill that, I already paid off. But rather you have to catch unit on supply lines, or you have to find the enemy artillery. But Foxes can still deal damage there, and they still be paying off. And on maps, I guess, where you have side spawns, you still want to keep a CV in there, because otherwise if the enemy just can slip the CV in there, like for example on 2 lakes, they still can come out on your side and instantly and annoy you. So like it won't completely overthrow the game and it mean that there's no behind the line action anymore and the battlefield is not 3D anymore, just only about the front line. It's nothing like that. It's still way more Wargamer Dragon than Steel Division, but it's a pretty good system. And yeah, then they say goodbye, explain once more that Odino is in the works, that all of these changes are in the works on them and mostly complete in-house for Eugen, but they still require a lot of testing before they want to release it, and that's why they can't announce a release date, a launch date for Odino and these changes yet, because, yeah, as they said earlier, Odino is kind of bound to this, because otherwise they would have to rework a lot of things again, which means that we most likely won't see it this year. Like, that's what I guess out of this, as we only have like a half a week left of complete works days next week most likely, and then between Christmas and New Year's it would be weird to launch a patch. Plus I don't think there is that many units Eugen developers working between the holidays, so I guess this is for New Year. But 2023 seems to be an exciting year for WARNO, and yeah, this should be pretty awesome. I hope you are as excited as I am for this, as this is really the most exciting thing we have heard in months about WARNO and it changing up. And in my eyes, all of these changes are positive. Yes, they will take a lot of work and a lot of fine-tuning, but all of these should improve the game. And yeah, I hope to see you in the next one. Bye-bye, and have a great day.